All right, we are now recording. Welcome to Worldwide Slot Car Chat number 22. I am your host, Greg Gow. Today we have John Kitt, RK is back, Andy Pinchuk, Philip Weltmeister, Russ Paver, Leo Capaldi, Dennis Sampson. Looks like we've also got Chris Walker is on the line, Slothead, and other people. Betruchi is here, and he is a person who'd been trying to join many, many times. So it's good that you're actually on a live chat now, Mr. Betruchi. Anyways, as I was explaining to our guests prior to recording, I have something to do. So I'm going to let you guys just kind of talk about whatever you want to talk about. Next time you see my face, I'll actually be here. Until then, I'm not here. So I'm going to switch to speaker view and let you guys have fun.
See you, Greg. Now what?
Yeah, everybody sits here with a mouthful of teeth. Yeah.
I have a specific question. Leo, I think you showed a Formula One car with a battery-powered light.
Yes. Hello, Andy. Yeah, a Formula One car with the harvesting light for the hybrid era, or a rain light as they were previously. So yes, do you want to see it again?
Yeah, I wanted to know where you got them, because that's something I've been trying to do for a long time.
Oh, okay. Well, I fabricated them using an electronic IC, integrated circuit, reference LM3909. So fitted the LED at the back, obviously, wired it to that chip, and fitted a 1.5 volt coin battery to drive it. So it's independent of the car power and the track power. It just runs from its own little battery. The battery seems to last quite a long time. Obviously, I did it more as a gimmick than for any particular purpose. So I haven't really used them for long periods of time, but the batteries do seem to hold out quite well. So yes, I'll share the wiring diagram on the forums, and you can pick it up from there. It's probably the easiest thing.
Excellent, very good. Yeah, because I want to do a series of safety cars and pace cars. My father, I inherited a 1980 Firebird Trans Am Turbo from my father, and I want to put a light bar across the top, and that pretty much should run all the time. And I don't plan on making it digital because it's 1/25th scale. And so when I saw that, I was like, oh, how did that work? And I wrote to Greg, I was like, I missed it. Where did that come from? And he's like, nah. Yeah, it's from Leo.
I'm a station wagon fan, so the cars that interest me most on the track, on the Formula One racetracks, are the medical cars. So I've got three medical cars that I've made up, which obviously have the flashing lights as well, based on the same sort of system as the actual single seat racer cars. So yes, I have a sort of vague plan to produce a video for YouTube, which will show the grid with all the cars, having the Formula One cars on the starting grid, followed by the medical car at the back, all with their flashing lights on, and then press go and have a pile up at the first corner sort of thing. So yes, so I must try and get that done. But yeah, I'll post up on Slot Forum and Slot Racer online well, you can pick it up there, but obviously you can message me if there's any questions as well.
Leo, we'll have to get you a little. We have to get you a little Doc Postlethwaite.
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Oh, Doc Postlethwaite was the chief medical officer for Formula One for years and years and years.
Ah, right. Okay, prior to Sid Watkins. Yep.
Oh,
okay.
Sorry, Watkins. Yeah, what? Doc Postlethwaite was a designer. I'm sorry. You're Watkins. I'm sorry. You're right. Sorry. Senior moment. Sorry.
Yeah, and the Harvey Postlethwaite thing. Yeah, I remember he was a designer for. Was it Tyrrell or Williams or somebody?
Oh so, gosh, yeah. He designed for Ferrari as well. He designed the 126C
right.
and the 126C2. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
I had Ferrari on my brain. Sorry, I shouldn't have read that book before this. Sorry.
Well,
I noticed we have Martin. Martin, have you been with us before? Tell us a little bit about yourself, please. Oh, you'll have to unmute, Martin. Sorry, we can't hear you.
Yeah, got it. That's all right. My name is Martin from Telford in Shropshire, originally from Innisflas in mid Wales. That's about it, really. Been slotting since 1967. So a long time.
And do you race primarily on 1/32nd scale, or?
Yes, 132. Yeah, only 132.
And do you race with a club, or?
No, never been to a club.
Oh, so you do stuff on your own then? Do you build as well as race?
No, I don't build. We raced straight from the box.
Very cool. So magnets in and just right out of the box
exactly,
on the track.
Yeah, straight from the box. Yeah, keep it simple.
That's brilliant. Well, thanks
Good,
for
bad, or
joining us.
indifferent. Well, I've seen all the videos, and this is the first time I've had a really crap year, to be honest. We've had 3 deaths in the family, and they've been so busy doing other things.
I'm so
This is
sorry
the
to
first
hear
time
that.
I've had a chance to come live, which is great. So thank you all you for making the year half decent.
Well, it's actually down to Greg and Kelly who do all the work. We just take all the
Greg,
credit. We take all the credit.
fair.
Yeah, we're just the talent. Cool. Do you have anything?
Yeah, I've caught up with all the videos.
Does anybody have anything they'd like to show off? Or Russell, I see you. Are you waving, Russell, or are you adjusting?
I'm adjusting.
Oh.
Oh. Dang it.
But at least his hands are in the air while he's adjusting.
That's true. It's one of the things you never want to do at an auction, I'll tell you.
Yeah, I got a question.
I
I think that maybe the people on the call are not the right ones, but has anybody done any work with 3D scanners yet? I mean, there's a lot of printing going on, but I wondered whether anybody had any experience with 3D scanning.
Well, I know that Mark Tyler has quite the scanner that he uses for his wife's sculpts, so he can sort of reduce them in scale.
Okay.
But I don't know of anyone else. I don't know even if Greg uses a scanner or not.
Yeah. No, we could try it later. I was just thinking to myself over the period, because my 3D printer is down at the moment, waiting for parts from China, and so I have all these ideas going around in my head. And yesterday, when I was getting my flu shot in the pharmacy, they have this rack of little die-cast cars, and there are some 1/32nd scale, some that are 1/38 scale, and some that are 1/36 scale, and all sorts of all over the place. But some of them are quite pretty, and I thought to myself, maybe if one could scan those things with a 3D scanner, then to resize them is absolutely no issue whatsoever. And it might be a quick way of getting some prints of cars that we don't normally have.
Yeah, the other thing to think about too, Dennis, is my understanding is there's quite a library of cars that are already done. So that might save you a wee bit of work there.
Yeah, sure. But I mean, it's going to come. If you go, for example, into the 1/43rd scale diecast scene, the guys who do a lot of those cars, there are hundreds of cars that we've never seen as slot cars, and it may be just a nice way of starting to get a bunch of more esoteric cars in 132 scale. I was looking at Marsh models the other day, and there's for example, the Wolf single-seater Can-Am car. Now, where are you going to see that anywhere else? And a bunch of other single-seater Can-Ams in 1/43rd scale. So, maybe those things would be a way of getting some more 1/32nd scale stuff.
Well, I know that it was a company called Bum Slot that did the Wolf Can-Am.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know how accurate it was, but I know it was around, and it might have been a resin body, but I'm really not quite sure. But it came as
probably,
a finished
yeah.
car.
I think the BUMs are all resin.
Yeah,
anyway,
I've looked into this a lot, Russell. So sorry, Dennis. Sorry, wrong person was on the screen at the moment. I'm the guy who Richard's doing the Wartburg for, that was on a previous call a couple of weeks ago. And that's a case where, for example, that car exists in 1/18th scale. For example, there's a Wartburg 311. If you guys, WARTBURG 311, if you Google that, beautiful, beautiful car. basically, the only way they got away with it was they built it right after the war, so the Politburo couldn't get down on them to get them to stop making it. But that only exists in 1/18th, and it would be so great to scale that down to 1/32 or 1/24 or whatever. And so I've been watching this for a very long time. I've had 3 offers to scan 1/18th scale models and scale them down. All 3 of them, right when it got down to the point of me sending them a model to scan, they disappeared. So there's a lot of interest in doing that. So I totally understand. Now, one thing I did look into, and if you look on YouTube, there are quite a lot of tutorials, is shrinking, and maybe John, you know a lot more about this than I would. You can people were shrinking their molds down to various sizes. So they would make a 1-to-1 copy of the 1/18th, and then I think in it was white spirits, I think is what it's called in English, that shrinks it down, and then they say, you know, you have to use it. It basically just evaporates, I guess, some of the silicone. I mean, like I said, all I know is I saw people doing it, so I was sort of thinking in my mind, if I can't get the 3D scanner thing, might as well give that a try, because apart from being out a little bit of chemicals and some time, you know, you haven't lost anything. I mean, John, have you heard anything about that sort of shrinking the molds?
You have to really know what you're doing, because it also depends on the thickness of the resin that you're shrinking. I mean, the other solution too is to do the old pantograph, right? You can build your own pantograph if you're mathematically inclined, but that's really, really, you know, high level stuff.
Yeah. My friend Victor Ferguson, who owns True Scale Products, the vacuum forming thing, he's done some of that shrinking with resins, Andy, and he basically does it on the solid mold. He wouldn't try and mold a body and then shrink that. It's you know, the vacuum form mold is a solid piece, so he would start with that solid piece in whatever scale, 1/24th or 5th or whatever, and then cast it cast a silicon mold, put the shrinking resin into it, let it shrink, cast a mold from that, let it shrink, cast a mold from that. But, you know, I don't know that it shrinks much more than some percentage at a time. And so it'll take quite a bit of time to get from 1/18th to 1/32, you know, 3 or 4 or 5 iterations. So the scanning in the long run may still be the better way to go. The problem with that is that, from what I could see, even basic 3D scanners are at least double the price of a 3D printer. So, you know, it may not be that economical a way to go.
Yeah, if only it was as simple as just jumping into cold water with some shorts.
Yeah, you would know about that.
I mean, what I have found out about the 3D scanning is there seems to be sort of, you either get them for very small objects or very large objects for something like a 1/18th scale or a 1/24th. And in my mind, because I used to do a little bit with videos and camera and photos and stuff, it's easier to shrink than to blow up. You know, if you blow up, you get step lines and stuff like that. So I'm always thinking about getting 1/18th and shrinking it. It was hard to find one. There was I was at an expo in Berlin a couple of years ago, and there was only like one where the 1/18th model would fit, but the camera goes around the thing and takes pictures from all, and there just wasn't enough space for the object and the camera. And then they were telling me there were problems like if your lighting is off, if it casts a shadow, it'll cause problems. Even if like a big truck goes by and the thing vibrates, it'll throw off your scanning. But again, you know, this is 2 years ago. Maybe that's not an issue anymore.
No, to your point, Andy, from what I understand, even from Immense Miniatures, there's still a lot of work that has to be done to the file once the initial scan is done.
Yeah, the bit that I've been reading, there's a scanner coming out of Europe somewhere. If you look at scandimension.com, SCANDIMEN, scandimension.com, they have a laser scanner called a SOL, S-O-L, and it has 2 modes. It has the ability to scan small objects, probably the biggest one being about a 1/43rd scale car. It's a little too small for 1/32 already, because it's like 100 millimeter by 100 millimeter. And then there's but you can adjust the machine to a bigger, to scan a bigger one, and that would probably take a 1/18 scale model quite easily. And the whole thing comes it's built together. The camera doesn't move, but the model moves. You put the model down on a turntable, and you move it. And actually, what they suggest is that you scan once, and then you change the position of the model on the platform, and you scan again. And its software knows how to mesh those two models, and you get a much more detailed 3D model when you're done. And the whole thing happens inside a tent that they give, that is part of the kit, where you put the machine and everything inside, and you zip it all up, so there's no external light coming in. And they do say here and there that there are problems with super shiny surfaces, or transparent surfaces and things like that. So you've got to basically spray the whole thing with a gray primer or something like that, and then that scans best. So that's a little bit of work that I've been doing on that, but it may not be of much interest to everybody else. I'll keep reporting back as I find out more. But Andy, as I do, I'll bear you in mind for that.
Thanks. I mean, one thing I have seen, and I actually, it's like a friend of a friend, there's an app for an iPhone where you can take pictures, and he did it of little figurines and claimed it didn't need a whole lot of extra work. It was like a dragon or something. So it was something which is fairly complicated, and it produced a 3D printer compatible file so that he could have it printed in it, and he showed the two next to each other, and they, of course there's a little bit of variation, but for our purposes, because we if you're scratch building, you're planning on sanding and cutting and anything anyway. It looked really, really, but yeah, lack of time. And my biggest problem is I hear all the trials and tribulations you guys go through with 3D printing things where the file's already okay, and I'm like, and I just don't have any space for a printer right now anyway. So, but that's something that I'm also keeping an eye on, and I'm guessing within the next 1 or 2 years that'll become more common.
Dennis, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Your 3D printer has a moving bed, whereas the most common ones seem to have a fixed bed, like mine does. So I'm just wondering what the advantages of the bed moving are. Is that not an overcomplication?
I think that they did that in order to just increase the size of what they could print.
Right. Okay.
So they've got a longer movement on the vertical axis.
Right.
I don't know that there's anything else, and I think it does have its disadvantages, because one of the very first things that everybody tells you to print when you have one of those, for those who don't know about it, it's an End of 5 Pro. So it's a 4-column printer with a movable bed, and then the printing head moves in X and Y axes across the top, and so the printer the bed steps down as it applies the layers of filament. One of the very first things that they say you should print is a set of bed supports, right? So that it makes the bed more stable. Right? So it may not be the best way to do things, but that's the way it is. And yeah, maybe I could have not bothered with that. If I'd gone with the Ender 3 Pro, then it would have had a moving head. I guess there are advantages in one and the other.
Thank you. Okay, yeah, I can see that now. Yes, it would allow you to print larger objects by extending the bed to the side, I suppose. Yes.
Yeah, I think that printer will print something nearly like 300 millimeters high. So it would be pretty big. It's 200 by 200 by 300 is the print area. So it's fair size.
Okay, thank you.
So I noticed that Mr. Betruchi, you're joining us, I think, for probably the first time. Can you let us know a little bit about yourself and what you enjoy about the hobby? Oh, you're muted, sir. Sorry. Oh, yeah, we still can't hear you for some reason. That's much better. There you go.
Okay, we're talking about scanners. I've got one, which is a flux. Can you see that?
Not quite, right up. That's much better. Oh yeah, nice. Yes,
It's
please
a
proceed.
printer, scanner, engraver, and drawer, all in one. And I bought that from America.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I do remember seeing those on Micromark or one of those
That's it.
places.
That's where I bought it.
Okay.
Right, let's introduce myself. My name's Tony Betruchi. I'm from London, England. I race 132. I do go to a club at the moment because of the corona, the virus. We're on lockdown, so I don't know if the club's going to start again. I've built a track in my front room because the wife has passed away and gone, and I can put the track out and keep it out, and that's what I've done. So that's what I'm doing at the moment. So that's
Plastic
me.
track?
Yes, Scale Electric Sports.
Cool.
It's 13 foot long by 5 foot wide.
Nice.
The only problem I'm having is trying to set up cars with the gearing. How do you do that? I'm having trouble. Do you have a donor or something, or?
How do you mean set it up with the gearing?
Yes, yeah. To get the gearing to go. It comes with 11 32s. How do you change them around to go faster or slower, or?
Depends on it. I guess it would depend on the car. If you're looking at things like slotted, NSR, Scale Auto, those ranges, they all have various gears and pinions available that you can swap out. If you're talking Scale Electric or Carrera, I think you're pretty much stuck with what you.
No, I don't like Scale. Scale Electric is a waste of time, I think.
Yeah. So you're running NSRs and slotted?
Yeah, NSR, slotted, sideways.
Okay. So all of those brands have various gears and pinions available. You just have to remember that when the cars that use an inline drive, where the motor's 90 degrees to the axle, they use a small pinion, like a 5.5 millimeter diameter pinion, and all the pinions are the same size, right? So whether it's a 10 or an 11 or a 12, the pinion's all the same size, so they mesh straight away. So there's no issue with trying to get a decent gear mesh. Similarly with sidewinders or angle winders, the gears and the pinions are all the same size. What they do is just adjust the shape of the teeth so that they mesh. And if you get a long way away from the standard ratio, then they start to get a little bit noisy. Like if you're going to a 13-tooth angle winder pinion where you would normally be using a 10 or 11, they get a little noisy because the teeth are very, very small. But in general, they all work fine. So it's just a matter of finding out from your local supplier what they've got in stock and trying different ratios. On the shorter track, you obviously want smaller pinions and larger gears, and on a long track, the other way around.
Oh, so that's so small track, smaller pinion, larger gears.
Yeah. Yep. So that the ratio is numerically bigger. So whereas an 1132 is 2.999 something, if you went to a 1032, that'd be 3.2, and you would get better acceleration coming out of the turns and a little bit better brakes. But you would lose a bit of the top speed, which on a 13-foot track you probably don't need anyway.
That's interesting. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you have any rolling roads or anything like that?
I don't know, but I think some guys do, like a dynamometer style thing. There are a couple. I mean, I've seen people take the rolling roads that are used for those little Tamiya four-wheel drive things that run inside those tracks with the sidewalls on them, I've seen people adapt those to testing 132 slot cars, but quite honestly, all my experience says to me that it's performance on the track that counts in the long run.
I know. I'm learning, but I'm getting. I bought my first scale electric back in 63, when I was 15. My brother's like, it's 15 years difference between me and my brother. My kid brother all he wanted to do was keep crashing the car off the track. So I stopped. Then girls come in the way, then work. Then I've got into RC cars. Then I was bored one day, I went to the model shop and someone said, "Oh, why don't you try scale electrics?" I said, "Well, where'd you race them?" So he introduced me to a club and it took off. Now I've got cars everywhere now and I don't know what. I've been bitten so bad I can't stop.
Welcome to the club. You're in amongst a bunch of fellow addicts here.
Exactly. I was going to say, welcome to the support group. You'll get a chip in the mail. Not to worry. Just make every weekly meeting. You'll be fine.
Yeah. My name is Tony, and I'm a slot car addict.
That's right.
And we love you, Tony.
I don't know if you can see, but there you go. Can you see them all there, piled up there?
Oh, yeah.
There's all new ones there, and they're all over the place. Once you get bitten, you can't stop.
That's brilliant. That's good. You're right at home.
I'm trying to get into scratch build.
What club do you go to?
Sorry?
What club are you attending?
It was Selden.
I don't know that one. I don't know those guys.
I've done Nick from what's it name? Watford, the club at Watford. He owned the slot 32. I raced there. I raced with Vikings down in Feltham. I did race with John Underwood at Oxford in when they were doing the circuit round, like different clubs racing each other.
You can go to any club and race with John Underwood. I'm surprised he's not on here, actually.
Yeah,
I think he has been in past some past ones.
Yeah, a few times. Yeah, a few times, yeah.
But Martin, I haven't seen your face before either. Are you new to us, or are you?
No, I've been out the country for a couple of weeks, so it just clashed with work, and I can't do the late ones. It's midnight for me, so I do pop in now and again whenever I can.
When
Sorry,
when Dennis was talking about how the plastic car manufacturers play silly bugger with the gears, and you can only go too far off of ideal. There's a little one of those conversion little thingies that I'll give you guys to let you know, what's a good gear and what's a bad gear. So, and this comes from Phil Hackett, who makes some of the best gears in the world and has made some of the best gears in the world for, 30 years, maybe more. All of the gears 90% of the gears that we currently use in this hobby are 0.5 module, which means basically close enough to 50 pitch. It's a little bit off, but that's basically what it is. And for production reasons and to make it easier for guys who don't know how to change gears, the manufacturers keep a fixed size spur and a fixed size pinion and then play silly bugger with the amount of teeth on it. Now you can do that to a point to where Dennis said, if you add too many teeth, you eventually change the pitch that it's just hideous. And if you subtract too many teeth, it's hideous as well. So the little conversion thing is take the diameter of any gear, either a spur gear or a pinion. So if you take an inline pinion, which is typically 5.5 millimeter, multiply it by 2, which gives you 11, minus 2 gives you 9. So in a 0.5 module gear in a 5.5 millimeter diameter, the closest to perfect you can get is a 9 tooth. So same thing with an 18 tooth spur gear.
18 millimeter.
An 18 millimeter diameter spur gear. Multiply it by 2, which gives you 36. Minus 2 is 34. So the best meshing 18 mil spur gear you can get is a 34 tooth. Now you can generally go about 10% either way. So with a 5.5 mil pinion, 9 is perfect, 8 is okay, and 10 is okay. Any more either way, and you really start running into issues on that stuff. Same with the spur gears. So an 18 mil spur gear, perfect is 34 teeth. You can go down to around 31 and up to, 35, 36 before you start getting into big issues.
Yeah, that's a really good thing to know. I'm not sure whether it's of any interest, but this approach to using different numbers of teeth on the same size of gear came from, that I know about in slot cars, came from the UK in way back in the late 70s, early 80s, when there were guys making gears for what was then the ECRA, what's now the British Slot Car, BSCA, British Slot Car Association, for their kind of racing. There were Muttley gears, there were MG gears, such things. They were made from phosphor bronze, and they started that, and you could get them in 64 pitch, and they were, if you started at like 36, you got a good tooth, and by the time you got to 38, they were starting to get so thin that if you got a hit on the gear, it would bend the tooth. But yeah, it's a pretty old and established technique in slot racing.
Yeah.
Chris.
I guess you used some of those in the old days, Chris. Mutleys and MGs.
Yeah, I've got a couple.
Yeah, I've still got a bunch too.
Yeah.
Chris, what did you say for the spur gear? Was the ideal 34 is the ideal? How far can you vary from that? Did you say
10%?
10%. Okay, thanks.
So like three.
Which is, and if it's more than that, you've got to go up to a 19 mil spur, right? So 19 times 2 is 38, minus 2 is 36. Now you can push that up to 38 and 39, right? But don't go too far. I mean, it's interesting. We sort of all revel or pretend we revel in the genius of some of the plastic slot car manufacturers, and a lot of them, when they started out, had absolutely no idea what the hell they were doing. So there are quite a few companies around who make or did make for quite a while pinions that were not within the correct range. So you'd see on the forums, guys were using 6.5 mil sidewinder pinions, and Slot used to make 13 tooth ones. And guys would go, oh, it doesn't mesh, it's horrible, I'm wearing out gears, it's making all kinds of noise, how do I adjust it? You don't adjust it, you throw it away. You can only stretch physics and the design. It's miraculous how they do it with the tooth profile and crown. I mean, there is quite a bit of intricate stuff going on in how they make them, but you can only push it so far.
Yeah, those teeth get so thin eventually, and it's such a strange shape.
Yeah.
that they really just don't mesh properly at all. You know, I resemble Chris's remark about bad 13-tooth pinions. So I've done that once or twice and thrown them away.
Now, just to ask a really dumb question here, I remember in the 60s, Atlas used to have beveled gears. Is there any advantage to that?
Yes, it depends. Most of the stuff that you currently see in 32nd scale and a lot of 24 scale, the current stuff is really designed thinking that most of the users aren't all that bright about slot cars, for lack of a better term. So they make things pretty simple. Bevel gears are great. I use a lot of old Atlas bevel gears and stuff like that. They are wonderful, extremely sensitive to setup. So and most of them are brass. So I mean,
heavy.
Yeah, they're heavy. You take a slotted or an NSR, whose ever contrate gear or crown gear you're using, and the teeth are big and chunky and they're soft and they're nylon and they work just fine and nobody really buggers them up that much. So, the same thing, guys say, well, what about 64 pitch gears? What about 72? I build cars with 80 pitch gears and the gears are, you can't even, they're tiny, tiny, tiny. But if there's any flex in the rear axle assembly, if there's flex in the motor, if there's any movement whatsoever, you've got tiny little wee teeth with tiny little bits of lash, and you get all kinds of issues. So 0.5 metric for the major manufacturers is great. They run fine, they're nice and smooth. There's no need to get any more high tech, because guys won't know how to change them and align them and all. It's probably good for the manufacturers. They probably sell a whole bunch more gears, but you probably end up peeing off more people than you would, on the other side of things. So anyway.
John, those brass bevel gears are very smooth when you get them right. They can be very, very nice. Atlas made a good range. Classic had a good range.
Yep.
Trade Chip had a good range. There were even some that had a high point on them,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it was like a differential in a car where the axis of the pinion sat about 1/8 of an inch below the axis of the rear axle, and so the gears, when you look at the gear, the teeth are actually cut at an angle across the face of the crown gear, and with a little bit of work and a little bit of toothpaste in them, you break them in. They run actually very, very well.
Yeah.
Does anyone currently manufacture bevel gears like that at all?
Yeah, there was a company in Spain called Black Arrow. Whether they still exist, I think they probably do. I don't know that they're sending out much right now, but their inline gears were bevel gears, but it was a steel pinion and a molded crown gear, and they were bevels.
Yeah. It was funny, Dennis. I just finished restoring for a guy an old classic Astro V.
Yeah.
And the contrate didn't look to be in great shape, and I thought I'd swap it out. So I had a bunch of dyed Parma PSE gears that I put in there, and bloody things wouldn't mesh at all. And it wasn't until I had a closer look that Astro V had a 3060 motor, but it was offset.
Oh yeah.
So the classic gear that came with it was
Molded
beveled and offset as well. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, on the 1/24 scale retro cars, we run those Parma PSE gears with about a 55 thousandths high point offset to the motor, and they ran fine. But we tend to run with a machined 48 pitch pinion that's machined with a bevel on it.
Yeah.
The machine with an angle on it, and it seems to help them mesh better.
Yeah, I've got a few of those ARP beveled pinions, and you know, even more than just a snick more than a 055 offset, I find they're fine if you set them up right.
Yeah. I mean, I've actually run some of them on as much as a 2mm offset, 80 thousandths offset.
Yep.
Complain a little bit, but not much.
Yep.
Now, are you guys talking about bevel gears specifically for inliners? Because I've seen a lot of angle winders, the angle winders that I could have sworn had bevel gear.
Well, what they do is they bevel the spur gear. So they cut the spur gear at an angle. Then they run either with a straight pinion or the other way around, that you'll have a straight cut spur gear with an angled pinion, so that you get better tooth engagement between the pinion and the drive gear. Sometimes people will use both an angled pinion and an angled spur, but the spur gears are usually molded at 15 or 16 degree angle. The pinions are cut at about a 5 degree angle. So that probably means that you can either drop or which way would you go? You'd actually be able to reduce the angle because of the angle of the pinion.
Didn't Monogram do that with one of their McLarens? They had an angle winder in the chassis, didn't they?
Yeah. There's for Andy, if you don't need to go out and buy a whole bunch of angled spur gears. There's more slot cars running around today, high-end slot cars, pro slot cars that use a straight cut pinion and a straight cut spur gear. So like a lot of things, there's, how do we get guys to buy more spur gears? Well, we'll put an angle on it and we'll tell them this is a good thing. I remember buying angled spur gears. Christ, they used to come stock on old dynamic RTRs that were years ago, and they were
old 48 pitch.
They were aluminum.
Yeah.
And one of the first things to go fast was get rid of the goddamn angled spur gear and put a straight cut gear in it, and you were much better.
Okay, thanks. I think in the 3mm axle, 124 scale, stuff like that, there might be some beveled gears still available, stuff like that.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with them. But if you got a bunch of straight cut gears sitting in your box, you don't need to supplement it with angled gears.
Especially things like the slotted gears or the NSR gears, the aluminum ones that are only about a millimeter and a half wide.
Yeah.
If you are scratch building a chassis and you get a decent mesh and the angle between the axle and the motor is relatively small, meaning like around 10 to 12 degrees, no problem whatsoever. They'll run forever like that.
Yeah. The other nice thing about straight cut spur gears is that they work in generally more applications, because you've got a boss on one side. So depending on your clearance, depending on the diameter or the length of your rear axle carrier, the gear doesn't care if it's running boss in or boss out. So you can use it in a lot more applications, where with an angled gear, it's really best suited to run one way.
Yeah, agreed.
What does boss in and boss out mean?
Meaning, if you look at the angle of the gear, is the boss of the gear where the set screw is that holds it onto the axle. Is that on the side of the small diameter of the angle or on the side of the big diameter of the angle? If there's no angle on the teeth, it doesn't matter, right? But on the others, it does matter. And generally, they're only made they're usually, certainly in 1/24 scale, they're made with the mounting boss on the small side, so that you have very little of the gear on the large diameter side. Then you have the gear teeth reducing, and then you have the little boss on the outside, and then the wheel comes up against that. So the space between the gear is between the gear and the wheel, not between the gear and the bearing. So the gear is right up next to the bearing, which is a really good thing when you've got a lot of power, or you've got a heavy car or a very fast car. You want to get the bearings out as close to the wheels as you can, or as close to the gear as you can in this case. But as Chris was saying, the other way around very often helps you too, if you have, depending on how your motor is sitting in the car and what space you have and what kind of bearings you're using, to turn it around the other way.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'm vastly approaching having lived more in Germany than in any English-speaking country. So my English is, and most of what I know about slot cars is from the UK. So even though I'm American, sometimes I don't know what these things are in English.
And then you've got to deal with me as a bloody American South African.
Sorry, when I heard the word boss, I thought of my wife. Sorry.
We've got to remember to talk about grub screws, not set screws, or set screws, not grub screws.
That's like, for example, yeah, you guys were talking about grub screws in some other video, and it's like I knew exactly what it was because I only knew the British term. I didn't know that the American term for it is set screw, because I never had to do it.
A grub screw is something that happens just before lunch if you're lucky.
Only if you're lucky.
John got that one.
Actually, we've had a massive breakout of grubs in pastures here where they've actually had to slaughter cattle because they're hurting the grass. And so when I heard about grub screw, I immediately thought of something. Well, they're multiplying.
Wow. Well, most British engineering comes down to gardening, because any British car left alone will go into basically earth.
Ooh.
Probably just won't grow because of all the oil that had leaked out just before that.
That's it.
Dennis?
So are we going to start a religious war about what's better, angle winder, slide winder, or inliner?
It's not a religious war. It's a matter of application and horses for courses, right? I don't know how you're going to put an angle winder into a Formula One car, and at some stages an angle winder works better than a sidewinder, mainly because you don't want the weight so far back. But but I think we're all, what should we say, tolerant enough that we all use all types.
And variety is the spice of life, is it not?
Yeah. What was Martin showing them? Martin with the wire.
You have to unmute, and then we can all see it. Sorry.
Okay, so you're saying about gardening and vehicles and agriculture. I don't know if you can see this photograph very well, but I took this today as a guy around the corner from me. His car was absolutely covered in the undergrowth, and somebody's come along and bushwhacked all around it. So that is a Nissan Micra going back to the earth. I took that photograph this morning.
Wow.
Either that or it was a Micra. It was a Nissan Bush that was growing it.
Yeah, it's been steadily growing, and we all take photographs in different levels of flora all around it. And then I just drove past it and somebody bushwhacked it. I don't know if they're going to sell the house or what, but it's quite a local hero, that Micra.
We actually had a series in Canada racing those darn things.
Well, I think the best use of them is a garden ornament.
Yeah, my daughter's slot car company, actually, we sponsored one car, and you can just imagine how things ended up at Mosport Turn 5A. You've got a short wheelbase, narrow track, high center of gravity, and very sticky tires. That thing became a bocce ball so fast it wasn't even funny.
Hey, Dennis?
Yes, sir.
Before I forget, Bill's name that is working on my cars is Zaremba.
Zaremba.
Barzem or Zeremba.
Zaremba. Bill Zaremba. Okay.
and Bill's Custom Creations. He sent me a receipt where he took them to the post office, so they are on the way back. I don't have them yet.
Okay, cool. For those of you who don't know, this guy Bill Zaremba has been restoring for Russell 2 of the original scale X-Trick tin plate cars out of the very first sets. And Russell showed us photographs, I think last week, right? And
Right.
The paintwork that this guy has done is just beyond description. It's so pretty. Very, very nicely done. But mechanically, we don't yet know how good the cars are going to be. So there may be still a little bit of work coming. All right. Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Russell.
Thank you.
Actually, I don't know if anybody's interested, but my daughter's very close to getting into full production on her car. If you want to see pictures of the, excuse me, the prototype on track, I could share those if you like.
Absolutely.
Yes, please.
Go for it.
Okay, here we go. All right. So there it is. That's
TR6.
TR4.
TR4. Sorry.
Right. So there's. I'll just take a couple of photos here. Now, the production car will not have a helmet as detailed. It'll either be red or white. She went a little crazy on it. The other thing I think she might do is actually pull the rear tires in just a little bit more so that they're under the fenders.
I didn't realize how much the back end looked like a sunbeam.
Yeah, no kidding.
If you go back one shot, and that really looks like a sunbeam from the back, doesn't it? That shot, yeah.
Yeah, it does. Rather,
wow. Yeah. Never noticed before.
Just not quite as much angle on the taillights, but yeah, it's very similar.
The GT6 was called the poor man's E-Type, and there's lots of these cars. You see a lot of queues across where you could almost put one together by smashing. But the front is definitely very unique.
John, what did you pull the body from?
Oh, you mean what was the basis of the body?
Yeah.
Oh, it essentially started off as just an Airfix TR4, and then it was detailed and I guess altered so that it would actually come out of the mold in one piece. And
so how much of that is one piece? Is the interior a separate piece altogether?
Nope, interior comes out as one piece. The only things that are separate are, I'll just point here, the driver and his appendages, the steering wheel, and the dashboard. Everything else comes out of the mold in one shot.
Wow. Okay, nice.
And you can see the full interior and the drive shaft.
Yeah. Oh, so it's front motor as well.
It is, yeah. I'll show you the chassis in a moment. I think it's a subsequent photo. And then I stuck a danger keep back thing on it. That won't have she got mad at me for that. There's the chassis. So basically what we do is there's I guess a half can that's used as the holder for the drive shaft, so that the mesh is very consistent and
takes all the lash out.
Do you so you cannibalize a motor for every car?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So how much are these things going to be going for?
They're going to be $75 US plus shipping. And she's also already got orders in for custom cars, believe it or not.
So and it's going to be sold already painted and detailed?
Yep, all as you see it. The only difference will be probably the number and the color of the driver's helmet. And if you want a left-hand drive, we can do that, or right-hand drive.
Is that 2 molds?
Sorry about that. Sorry, say
Is that
again?
2 molds for left-hand drive or right-hand drive?
No, it's just the dashboard that changes.
Okay, and the driver on the other side.
Yeah, the driver's just stuck on the other side. Same driver, just on the other side.
Nice. Any plans to sell them without paint?
Not really. You know what? Honestly, we've offered that in the past, and haven't had many takers, to be honest, Dennis.
Okay. Just guys like us that see a Group 44 car sitting there, just waiting for the green numbers.
Well, the other option too is if I mean, heck, if you want one, we can perhaps paint one up without the red stripe. There are going to be two colors. There's white with a red stripe, as you see here, and red with a white stripe.
Nice.
And then mini lights and or I suppose what do you call it? We also thought of doing like Dunlop inserts, but I think the mini lights look better.
Mini lights look great. Very
So
cool.
There you go. Now
Very cool.
I just have to stop sharing. How do I do that? Oh, here we go.
Click the red button.
Oh, here we go. Yeah. And we're back.
Stuff.
Well, thanks so much for taking a look. I appreciate if you have any questions or feedback, really appreciate anything anyone would contribute. As you can see, my wife has the talent, or my daughter got her talent from my wife. So.
Actually, you mentioned Group 44. I've been trying to find decent color photos of their cars, and I've not been very lucky on the internet. I'm not sure if maybe anybody, because I'll be honest with you, I think Google's kind of gone a little bit ad crazy. Like, unless they can make money off of it, they just don't show it to you. I mean, I've gone down to like the 44th page of, and you know, with a name like Group 44, it's a little bit too general, and I've tried Bob Tullius and all that kind of stuff. Because I'll be honest with you, I just think his livery is probably pretty easy to make, so that's why I'm looking for. And I'm a big Triumph fan, and you know, he had massive success, particularly with the Spitfire, and which is one of my favorite cars of all time. So if anybody has any Group 44 color pictures, or they know where I can get some or whatever, I'd highly appreciate it.
Andy, as you were speaking, I Googled Group 44 cars on Google Images, and I have thousands of them.
Yeah.
Of Spitfires in color?
Hang on.
No.
Yeah.
I've got
Lots of Jaguars.
I've got a GT6.
There's a GT6, which is pure white.
The GT6 and the Jaguar are pretty common. You'll see the TR6 quite a bit too.
I've got TR6s.
I'm putting it down to the fact that being in Europe, in the data protection stuff that we have, it could just be because those are on websites that haven't implemented the data protection rules that you have to have now.
That's possible.
I might be being blocked.
Maybe that's possible.
A very good source for a lot of photographs is a website called racingsportscars.com. Great history on a lot of cars and some good photos too.
Okay, Andy, I just changed my search from Group 44 cars to Group 44 Spitfire. All kinds of them. Tony Adamowitz.
Good Porsche driver.
Yeah.
Tony Adamowitz, there's GT6s, there's Spitfires, there's...
Maybe I should have been more precise. I'm particularly interested in the interior, like how the crossbars look, the roll cages, the dash, the seats. We get extra points for having those things being as authentic as possible. Not just the livery and the sponsors, but also the wheels, where the fuel cap is, because sometimes they put the fuel cap somewhere else, things like that. It's a lot of the real detailed stuff.
Well, if you can't get pictures in Germany, how are they going to know?
Good point, Phil. Good point.
Good point. Yeah, I'm a bit of an oddball. I mean, the more I find out about the SCCA, the more I like it. But it's not that popular here. So that's a good point. Yeah, I could just make that up.
Be careful. They have ways of finding out. Yeah.
Well, you make your model, you take the photograph, and then you update the photograph.
Yeah, you just blur the photograph and stick it
Blur
up on
the
the web
photograph
somewhere.
a little,
Yeah.
yeah. Photoshop can do all sorts of things for you these days.
Yeah, get a pair of your wife's tights over the lens and stick it up there. Well, that's how they make old women look attractive, isn't it?
I thought it was Vaseline on the lens.
No, that's,
Yeah, well, it's
I
for what
thought it was
people who
lots
don't
of
look.
beer.
Well, yeah, there's that as well. But yeah, the Vaseline on the lens is for people who don't respect their equipment.
I'm just trying to see if I have any photos for you.
Yeah, but I'm with Andy there. It's a great livery. The cars will always look very pretty. They're beautifully prepared.
Andy, I have one of a restored Triumph if you want to see it.
Is it a replica or is it original?
Good question. I don't know.
A lot of them are replicas.
Are they? Okay. Can you see that?
Yeah, a Mark IV, just like mine was.
Okay, and then
that looks pretty authentic.
Yeah, I think it's a fairly good representation of what the car looked like in the day.
Yeah,
except for the roll bar. The roll bars in the day didn't look like that.
Yeah, I was going to say the roll bar is probably more robust than they would have had back when.
Is there nothing on the Pebble Beach Concours pages? They usually have something good like that there.
Pebble Beach?
Yeah, they have a big concours there once a year. Sacrilege, they put him on the fairway in the greens, and oh God, it's terrible.
Sacrilege to which? The cars or the greens?
The golf. I mean, you put a car any bloody way, you can only hit a golf ball in certain places.
There used to be a guy who posted Group 44 cars quite a lot on the Slot Forum. I can't remember his name exactly, but something like his name's something like Green Horse or something. Maybe
Green Man.
Remember?
Or Green Man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Green Man.
Yeah, that's it. Green Man. Something.
Greg Petrolotti. He's in Oregon.
Ah, right.
Okay, I'll use the search engine because the big problem is also a lot of these forums, Google doesn't penetrate them. So if you find the forum and then like I was doing some research recently on some stuff that Carrera did just when the original founder died, and I know for a fact that I had seen websites about this stuff and I can't find it anymore. For some reason, Google's not finding it, and I've come to the conclusion it's probably because it was in some forum that Google can't get into for some reason.
Do you want to try something like DuckDuckGo or one of those search engines? They're pretty intrusive.
I've seen Greg. I've seen Greg on Facebook, I think, as well. Remind me of what his surname was. Is it Petrolati or something?
Petrolati, yes.
Petrolati,
R-O-L-A-T-I. Petrolati.
Is he still around, Dennis?
Yeah, he's still around.
I entered one of his proxies quite a few years ago, and to be honest, I wasn't all that impressed with how it worked out.
All right. Andy, one more place I found. It's called barnfinds.com, barnfinds.com. And they have an article in there about the 1973 Group 44 Spitfire. And there are a lot of photographs. Now, this is presumably the restored one, but there are a lot of photographs in there that you wouldn't normally see in other places. Close-ups of the fuel tank in the trunk and the cockpit and the engine bay, things like that.
Is this one that was up for sale?
It might have been, I don't know. But it's, I'll tell you what, I'm just going to copy that and I'm going to share it on the chat.
Yeah, BarnFinds is a great time waster.
Barnfinds.com. All right, it's on the chat, the link that I found.
Dennis, if you like, you can paste it to your desktop and share it with everybody.
I could do that too. Let's see. Let me do it this way.
I just found a YouTube video on the.
There we go. Can you see it?
Oh, yeah.
So there's that photo. There's that photo. There's that photo. Then there's this one. And that one.
There you go.
And that one. And I think that's about it that I can see there right now, but that was what I found for you. Chris, you were saying something? Sorry.
Yeah, I just found a YouTube video on a Group 44 factory SCCA GT6 race car. It's a 10 or 12 minute long video. So they go inside, outside, and all the rest of the stuff. So
nice.
Yeah, the GT6 I've actually had a lot of luck finding a lot of things on.
Yeah, no, I just thought if you're looking for interior clues, it's probably not that much different, and probably not too many of your scrutineers are going to know if the, the radio knob is on the left or the right sort of thing. So.
Yeah, there are a few rivet counters, but
interesting.
You may want to use like a vintage steering wheel of some sort.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a guy in Cornwall called John Clancy. He does DVDs still of all kinds of classic British cars, and especially their motorsport history. And so he actually, I bought most of his DVDs already. He actually did a Group 44 DVD as well, and he sent me some unreleased footage of the Le Mans Spitfires from the insides. There's some place in England that's got one that they're in the process of restoring. It's not open to the public, but he was allowed to film them. So, I've got that. And that's my biggest, that's one of my, you mentioned, John, right-hand, left-hand drive. You can get a GT6 kit fairly easily, but they're all left-hand drive. And if I wanted to convert that to a Le Mans Spitfire, I have to get it right-hand drive. So I'm still trying to figure out how to do that.
Well, actually, the easiest way is just, if you can, make a different dashboard. That's what we did with the TR4.
Is there nothing on those Spitfires on the Le Mans 24-hour museum, the actual Museum de Sarthe or whatever it's called? Their website's pretty. Yeah, well, no, if you go on their website, they got some really good, some good old photos in their archives. Okay,
well, it did win its class one year, so.
Yeah, I do remember. Reading about that one. But yeah, it's Musée de 24 Hours, I think it's called, something like that. It's worth a poke.
Is that the car David Hobbs drove?
He did drive it one year, yeah. And the big problem there is like there's not very much to the livery. They're British Racing Green, a big number, and they each had a different colored stripe. But what I'm having trouble figuring out is like it says Triumph Spitfire written on the front fender or somewhere. I don't know if that's like what color it is because most of the photos are black and white, and the ones that are color are so washed out and grainy. I can't tell. Is it gold? Is it silver? Is it gray?
What would you like it to be?
Whatever I can figure out, make it work. I'll probably do. I'm guessing it's gold for some reason because it looks a little shiny, but yeah. And then like the little lights that they had on the top so they could see which car was coming in to the pits. I think at night, little things like that you have to get right because there are rivet counters in the club that when they say, well, it's got the orange light, but it's number 66 that had the blue lights. Oh shit.
You may have to join a North American club. They're probably a little more lax in that respect.
Well, you see, considering I'm always defending last place in all the races, I have to try to make up in the concourse. So.
Yeah, no, that's all right. That's cool though. Have you progressed with the car at all, or are you still in the planning stages?
Completely planning. She who must be obeyed thinks I spend too much time on it already. So. I mean, my daughter's 14, so I figure I got about 4 more years before, I could start doing it in earnest.
Yeah, or you could have your daughter help you.
No patience. She gets all that from me. No patience. I didn't have any patience till I was 40. Actually, that's something. Dave Kennedy put up a video about a month ago where he was showing the Polycar multi-voltage power pack and talking about getting people into the hobby and stuff like that. And this sort of falls in line with that gearing question that Tony brought up earlier. I mean, one of the things that, and I agree with Dave and I think what Dennis was saying to Tony, in most cases, I would argue the cars are too fast when out of the box, and that people just can't enjoy them because they're just too fast and they're too powerful. And I know a lot of you guys have done things with youngsters and stuff like that. Now, like I've had with older sets, I've had luck with just like a dimmer that you plug the power pack into, and then you can turn the power down that way. Or you just put some sort of a stopper to keep them from pulling the trigger too far or anything like that. Adjustable power supplies are available, stuff like that. But I was curious, apart from being overpowered and maybe the gearing not being great, has anybody else got any other thoughts about sort of easing people into slot cars? Because the great games out there, computer games or any kind of games, they're easy to learn, difficult to master. And I'm of the opinion that slot cars are very difficult to master. Therefore, we need to make it easy to learn. And so I'm kind of looking for some sort of special sauce that would help maybe make it easier to learn for people.
The best all around, Andy, is just a half decent adjustable power supply. I mean, there's no, they're only going to stick on the track as good as they stick on the track. So there's, not too many training wheels unless you want to throw a magnet underneath or something like that. But, really the half decent adjustable power supply is, and you'll enjoy it as well, because if you get a good one, it helps out. And, they're worth their weight in gold. You can do all the same stuff. You can, put a screw or something underneath the trigger and adjust that, and, all the other little, things you can do. But I think at the end of the day, the adjustable power supply is the best way.
And
yeah, I do wish that some of the manufacturers would make somewhat smaller hand controllers so that the kids could hold them. Some of those controllers are too big for those little hands.
Yeah, that's a good point. I know our daughter, when she started, used to use two hands for sure. But I absolutely agree with Chris. An adjustable power supply is one of the best things, especially when she used to have her friends over. That really made a difference.
The Polycar sets have both. They have a very small thumb controller that kids can use, and the wall wart is adjustable from about 2.5 to 12 volts, I believe. Which, it's great. It's going to get my grandchildren interested. It's really useful.
Maurizio has done some really good stuff for slot cars in the years that he's been involved in the hobby. That's for dead sure.
Yeah, and he's a decent guy too.
What a nice fella, from what I've heard.
Yeah, very, very nice.
Oh, I see Greg's back.
Go ahead, Betruchi, go ahead.
You're talking about getting young people to learn how to race, but the club I was going to, we got youngsters. Some of them are good drivers, but when they start marshalling, they're playing with their mobile phones. You can't get them off the phone. The only time you get them off the phone is when they're racing on the track. But there's some good drivers there, but they just lose concentrate when they're not racing.
Yeah.
Not interested in marshalling.
Well, maybe you should have them videotaping the race with their phone, and then they'll be more engaged.
Well, we tried everything, but maybe now when we get back, maybe they might change. I don't know. It's hard to say.
I actually did start filming using the slow-mo function on my iPhone with some of our races. Like if I hear a car making weird sounds and stuff like that, and then like in the break in the action, I'll show it to the driver and say, hey, look at what your car is doing. And they actually really appreciated that. So,
cool.
Because they're like, oh yeah, my spoiler's starting to fall off, or you could see that the front bearing had come off, and so the front wheel was sort of wobbling around, stuff like that.
I liked the recent posting on Slot Forum from a guy whose grandchildren were using his slot track, but they wanted to stop for coffee and stop for McDonald's and things like that. So he's now having to build a McDonald's restaurant or a cafe outlet or whatever, so the kids can stop as they zoom round. It's the modern way.
They drive through.
Yeah, they don't want pits, they want to drive through.
Yeah. Excuse me.
For me, when I do a party, which is usually kids, I adjust the power down. So number one, adjustable power supply, like they're saying, and I adjust it down to just below or just above where they can basically go full throttle and only crash at one turn, maybe two turns, where it's at the end of a straight, essentially. And crash and burn. Because if you just put their car back on, then that's just part of the game, is getting their car put right back on. If they crash and they're out of the race, then they realize that crashing is bad. And so the first hour of a party tends to be one lap races where it's just everybody just crashing. And then it progresses to 2 and 3 and 4 lap races. And eventually by the end of the party, you've got 6+ kids who can actually keep the car on for the entire time. And more often than not, I have the parents asking me if I can stay longer than the standard 2 hours, and they're willing to pay whatever I ask them to pay because this is like the best thing. And all the kids are always just screaming excited the whole time, even if it's just 6 kids, right? And they're just constantly racing, but even more so when it's 12 or more kids and they have to take turns, and then it's all get in line, do a different car and all that kind of stuff. Well, that car stays on better. Okay, well, he gets that car next and you get a different car next, and so on and so forth. But honestly, crash and burn is pretty much the only way to get them to realize that crashing is bad and to actually try. And then when it clicks for them about how you can speed up and slow down and go slow for the turns and fast for the straights, then it's all downhill from there.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Show that there are implications for your actions, right?
Yeah, and in that regard, I would say that it doesn't matter what kind of cars they are. It doesn't matter whether they're magnets or magless, what kind of tires or what kind of track or anything. You just, you set it so the cars can go around at full throttle except for 1 or 2 turns. And then when they actually start getting good, then you crank up the power. And what I usually do when they start having multiple races in a row without everybody crashing on the first turn is say, by the way, you've been running at quarter of the available power. Does anybody want to try more power? Yeah! Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. So I crank it up a teeny little notch so that they can, if they go full throttle, they'll crash at almost all the turns, but it's still not very fast. And they're like, wow, that's so much faster and harder. And then I'll say, well, do you want to see what full speed looks like? Can we go full speed? No, I will show you what full speed looks like. And then we'll go back to regular speed for you guys. That's when you start getting the dads coming over and going, oh, it's a little harder than I thought it was going to be. I'm like, oh yeah, here's my card for my club. Come and join us.
So you just start with that one little lump of crack.
Yep. First one's free, bro. Here you go. I mean, I almost always try to throw in a dad's, a parent's race or a dad's race and if there's not enough dads to all have the dads or adults or whoever wants to race be, in a race together, then I'll have, a couple of kids and a couple of dads in the same race, and it's dads versus kids and stuff like that. And
well, that's because regardless of the scale, driving is a lot like sex. Everybody thinks they're great at it.
Yeah, but admittedly, I don't fall off in sex so often.
Yeah, there's no crash and burn. Well, okay, maybe there is.
Yeah, the burn just takes there's a delayed burn.
It's maybe where you're at, where I don't have that problem when we're down this way.
Sometimes it's your wallet that burns, right?
Yes, YouTube, this is not kid-friendly. Slot cars must be kid-friendly. Nope.
Good point, Greg. When does the recording stop? Is it on the hour?
I usually stop on the hour. It's currently running.
Okay, because I got a video to share about why I'm sat in this wagon, but I can't do it and record.
Oh, okay. Well,
it's not risky. It's just
I can.
Unless it's got nudity.
Now, so Martin, are you on vacation? Because it looks like you're in a caravan or something.
Yeah, I'm sat at the back of my camper van. I got a little 20-foot camper van, and I'm going to show you a very short video of it when we stop recording. It'll incriminate me if I show it when it's being recorded. So that's the reason I came on Saturday. I have a little 5G dongle that with a data-only SIM, and it's what we travel around. We can't fly to the States this year. We missed a 3-week holiday in the States. So we bought this little thing.
I'll make it absolutely clear that the recording has been stopped so that you'll know when it's okay to play that video. Russ, I kept seeing you wave your hand. Did you have something to add?
Yeah, I'm going to show Dennis, and I'll show the rest of you. These are
Everybody else close your eyes.
Yeah, these are the recent pictures of the 10-plate cars. So I'm going to try to share this with you.
That restoration that you were doing, haven't done?
Yeah.
Cool.
Can you see that?
Yeah. Wow, that's nice.
Yeah. So they're.
He's done a great job on those.
So I could tell you that I don't know if you can rebuild gimbals, but it's going to need everything mechanically is there except, well, I think everything's there, but I have no idea how to do anything on those. These, because they're riveted at the bottom, so evidently he's taken them apart so that he could paint them. So there you go, Dennis. That's what you'll be getting.
Okay. Yeah, well, the mechanical part of it doesn't scare me too much. I'm glad that I don't have to deal with the paint, because I'm not that good at paint. Not like that guy is. That's really, really nice job.
Yeah.
Russell, it looks like he actually painted the roundels on them too.
Yeah, he did. From what I understand, he did the whole thing. He painted the exhaust, the everything on it. I mean, everything. And he obviously, there were a couple little nicks, and there might have even been a little bump or two, and also the louvers across the top of the hood area. He straightened that all out. So I don't know what all he did. Like I said, at $400. So, but 2.5 years. Yeah. So, Bill Zaremba.
Yeah, I got it. Thanks.
Bill's Custom Creations.
I'll remember.
But if you go on his website, I mean, some of the stuff he does for people is just phenomenal, but he does mostly models and things like that.
Looking forward to seeing that progress. So yeah, basically it's what we've just seen is going to be sent to Dennis. Plus,
I'm going to send that
parts are there.
Plus a big bag of bits by the sounds of it.
Bag of bits, yeah.
Yeah, when I originally sent them to Bill, he was going to refurbish them. But then I think when he got them and realized that they weren't your typical slot car, he couldn't do it. So he did, what he does best. And, that's it.
It's the right way to do it. Get everybody to do what they do best.
Right. So
I've seen some pretty impressive tool restoration on YouTube. There's a guy who gets like 100, 200-year-old tools of various kinds, hand tools usually, and they're all rusted and rotted and everything, and he will strip them down, carefully, derusting, carefully, putting a slot in a screw to try to unscrew it rather than drill it out, just all this very careful dissection essentially of the tool.
Yeah.
And then any part can be rescued, he grinds it down as necessary, you know, after stripping the rust and, you know, all this stuff that he does. And then any part that can't be rescued, he builds from scratch. You know, he gets raw material and just builds it from scratch based on, you know, caliper measurements of the original set screws. Like, oh, well, that's a, you know, that's a 20 thread pitch. You know, like cuts that on his lathe to make the exact thing, and then puts it all back together. That's kind of what I'm expecting from Dennis. So Dennis,
I think it ran off.
Pictures and videos.
Dennis ran off.
He's scared. He's like, I can't live up to that kind of standard. He's got to put his headphones in. We were just saying that you've guaranteed you're going to do that kind of video for Russell's stuff, right, Dennis?
Like this.
Can you hear us, Dennis? Is my microphone working?
I can.
Oh, your video's frozen.
Hello? Hello?
So we're expecting a fancy production restoration video of Russell's things from you.
Am I back? Am I back?
You're back now.
Okay. My internet connection went unstable for a moment. Whatever. I certainly will take a lot of photographs, but whether I'll do a video or not, I don't know. I don't have that amount of. Well, I suppose I could. Yeah, it's possible, but it'll probably be photos. It's a lot easier for me to do the photos.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just stepped away for a moment while we were talking about people who paint. I have a friend down in San Diego who races slot cars, and I think those of you who used to inhabit SCI back in, well, maybe 10 years back, will remember there was this really weird guy who called himself 68 Caddy, who used to do all kinds and conditions of weird body painting and so on. And he paints stuff for me every now and then. He did me a little, let me, yeah, you'd have to zoom in. This is one of those Area 71 3D printed, so Lamborghini Huracan that I'm getting ready for the GT3 Proxy this year. The initial parts of the chassis are built, trying to get down to very, very lightweight for a change. The initial tests were quite encouraging. Still busy with that. Has one little feature that Chris might like to see. If I can get it close enough and get it to focus. Right here and there are two little wire hooks that control how much the outside pans can lift. And I've actually been experimenting with different thicknesses of wire insulation, silicon wire insulation around them to provide a little bit of damping. Mm-hmm. Makes a big difference. So I'm busy with that. But yesterday, this same guy down in San Diego sent me some 1/24 scale bodies for him to build, for me to build chassis for him. And one of them is this Tamiya Mercedes SLS, and it's done in a like a flat metallic green and yellow. It's I don't know that the photographs even whether it really does it justice. It's absolutely stunning.
Looks great.
Yep. Now, Dennis, on the dampening of your chassis, did you think about using urethane instead of plastic?
Well, I was thinking about a couple of things because I built it with the normal about 25 thousandths of rear lift on the pans that I normally do, and the car was okay, but it had a little bit of shudder. So the very first, if those little pieces are off there, then the pans actually can lift. You could see there.
Yeah.
Movement there. It's just carried on a piece of 032 wire that's soldered right at the front, and allows that whole pan just to flex up and down. And the body will be mounted on those pieces. There are those little pads underneath the body, and then four little screws will mount that whole thing
That looks like it's a really light chassis.
It is. Yeah, it's the whole car when it's up and ready to run is under 80 grams. So the chassis is like 19 or something like that. But I built it like that and I tried it. It was okay, and it had this little bit of a chatter. So the very first thing that I did was, while the motor was in, is I put a piece of tape right across the back of the chassis from the motor to the sides of the sides of the pans, just to dampen that movement, and it transformed the car. So then I thought to myself, well, you know, don't really want to be putting tape underneath a brass chassis, although I have done it before. So that's when I thought about, let's see what happens if I put little bits of silicon wire insulation, and that's the easiest thing to use. And so just a little piece of insulation, just slide it over the end of that piece of wire, and I'll probably just hold it in place with a touch of super glue eventually. And the advantage of that is I've got a bunch of different bits of lead wire that have all sorts of different thicknesses of insulation, and I'll be able to maybe try and use different thicknesses and tune the chassis that way.
Do you do the same? Is it the same sort of solutions for your body mount as well? Would that make a difference?
Well, the body mounts here are okay. In the body itself is a little piece of brass in each corner that is glued onto a piece of foam that's on the inside.
Oh.
And the foam is then glued onto the body, so they already have a bit of movement on them. You could, I don't know if you
can see that. Yeah.
But there's already a little bit of movement there, so that it cushions the body. And then that means that I can tighten those screws up tight, and I don't have to worry when I send it off on a proxy with having to put information at the bottom that says this screw must be a quarter of a turn loose, and that one must be 3/4 of a turn loose, and this one must be just snug, and this one must be that, you know, which you often see on the bottom of proxy cars that are sent around.
Right. So that means when you send it for the proxy, you'll have to choose, I guess, the height or depth of whatever insulation.
Those little pieces of insulation. Yeah, I'll do that tuning on my own track first, and then I'll just send it off and take my chances.
So basically, you're just going to have this thing tangoing down the track. It'll be moving all over the place.
No, it's not really. There's very little movement there.
No, I know. I meant that in a good way, and that everything will sort of synchronize, and it'll go really well.
Hopefully, hopefully.
Yeah.
And
That's why I meant by tango.
Does the end bell butt up against your main rail opposite the can?
Very close to it.
You can use, I've found that just a couple of tiny bits of, a couple of drops of shoe glue or something on the end bell to that rail.
That's a good idea.
That'll really help. You know, you get that motor oscillating and flexing up and down, and you can get a little bit of chatter on the back.
Yeah, good idea.
Yeah, it's if your rail is close enough to your end bell, it's a snap.
Yeah, I can think about that. Thanks. That's a good idea.
Yeah,
and for Andy's sake, sorry.
Oh yeah, I've been using this. So I use if I'm using a bite bar. I'll sometimes run the bite bar through some tubing on the center section of the chassis.
Yeah.
And then I'll slip a little piece of silicone insulation over the bite bar where it goes through the square tube.
Yeah.
And that helps a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you there.
I was just going to say, for Andy's sake, and don't forget to mind your boss.
What are you going with N18s on that?
No, N22s.
N22s, yeah.
Yep. I have not had a lot of luck with N18s. I still prefer, certainly on my track, I still prefer N22s.
Yeah.
Usually on most of my proxy cars, I've used NSR Ultra Grips, but I'm starting to think that maybe N22s will be a better idea.
Yeah, well, the Ultras seem to me to like a little bit heavier car.
Yeah, and I'm trying to build them lighter because I've had too much trouble not being competitive with heavier cars the last little while. As I've built the cars lighter and lighter, they're getting better and better.
Although Cam's bloody cars weigh like 150 grams.
True. Yeah, for those of you who are not into this proxy racing scene, there are 2 or 3 of these proxy series going on in 1/32 scale that are all covered on Home Racing World. The 2 big ones right now are the GT3 proxy, which has just completed the 2019-2020 season, and we're getting ready for the 2020 to 2021 season. Then there's a Can-Am proxy as well for the 66 to 74 Can-Am cars. And both of them are nice because they allow basically any kind of chassis. You can scratch build, you can modify a kit, you can use a 3D printed, whatever. Both the GT3 and the Can-Am are open as far as motors are concerned, so you can use as big or as small or as fast or as slow a motor as you like. They're both completely on rubber tires only, and they both run on a collection of wood tracks only. So for those of us that like to scratch build, those 2 series are really a lot of fun. And I did very well in the predecessor to the to the GT3 championship, which was the Group 5 championship. I won that and won it twice and came second twice in the 5 years that it was run. But then when it morphed into GT3, I seem to have lost my way, and I'm really struggling to get competitive again.
What kinds of...
Oh, sorry, Greg.
No, go, Chris.
Did you get... did Ernie send you a couple of his stamped 32nd or the cut 32nd kits?
Yeah, the stainless steel ones that go under the Group C cars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of, well, I was talking to him this morning, and I'm going to get one. I might try one of those, but with the pans narrowed up a little bit.
Yeah, I actually took one of my converted slotted Toyota Group C car that I have that chassis underneath. I took it to Electric Dreams last week when I was working there to try that on their new track. And I took along a standard plastic chassis Toyota as well. Now, on my track, the plastic chassis is still quicker than the stainless steel chassis because it's 10 grams lighter. On the big track, it was a different story altogether. The heavier chassis under with the Mazzetti with the stainless steel actually worked very, very well there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I might try that too at some stage.
Yeah, I think what I will do, if you, I'm sure you remember, his whole body mount system includes the guide tongue.
Mm-hmm.
So the guide tongue is sort of free to rattle around a few thou in all directions.
Yeah.
And I think I'd probably cut that and sort of, that to me just, I can't get my head around that.
Wrong, yeah.
Sorry, Chris, you were saying the guide actually moves in the chassis?
Yeah, Dennis, well, actually, yes. Ernie's,
see if I can find it.
There's Dennis being one of them, has tried lots of chassis where the guide tongue is supported by maybe he's going to get one, supported by 2 pieces of piano wire that as the car comes into a corner, the guide will actually flex sideways a little bit, which you can argue has some merit. Dennis and I I tend not to think that way, but on Ernie's chassis, there's a whole plate that sits on top of the chassis, and it incorporates the guide tongue, which is actually free to rattle 5-10 thou either directions as well as up and down. And I'm not a big fan of that at all.
Yeah, I don't know about that. No, certainly not the way that I assembled mine, because I got mine right here.
No. I thought you meant no. His new.
Oh, not this one. Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about this one.
No, that one, I've rebuilt that. As I don't like the whole fact that the front end is solid on that.
Oh, okay.
I think the front piece should be sprung more like a play fit chassis.
Okay. It's a Mazzetti design that's being marketed by Scale Racing Center, Alan in Tacoma, and it's designed to fit directly underneath a slotted Group C car. There are two versions of it depending on the size of the length of the guide tongue at the front for longer or shorter guide leads. But basically you take all the mechanicals and the motor part out of your slotted and you bolt it all in and assemble it all into this stainless steel chassis, and away you go. As I say, it's 10 grams heavier than a stock slotted. So on some tracks it's not as fast, but on big winding tracks, particularly with rubber tires, it seems to work quite well. Chris is talking about the fact that the front end is completely solid, that there's very, very little in the chassis itself. There's basically no flex whatsoever. It's only whatever movement you put on the pan, on the motor part. But that hasn't worried me much.
I'm just fascinated that you've got these different philosophies that still kind of work.
Some guys will say, well, I've always believed, and I think Chris believes with me, that the triangle between the two front tires, if you're running a car that uses its front tires as a part of its handling paradigm, shall we say, then the triangle between the two front tires and the guide, that relationship needs to be as stiff and as solid as possible. What the rest of the chassis does is a different story altogether. So, and most of my scratch builds have always been like that. You make the front end very stiff so that the guide is supported vertically in the slot by the front wheels, and any movement on the chassis effectively is the back end of the chassis moving around.
Yes, I think Chris mentioned earlier a guide holder that is able to shift side to side. The one that I'm familiar with is a 3D printed one called Pip Slot.
Pip Slot, yeah.
Guide. And it started out as a thing that you could retrofit into an existing chassis, cut out the old guide holder and glue down a little bracket that had the wobbly guide holder. And then he developed full chassis that have it all integrated and everything. I got one and I tried it on a car. It didn't go through any proxies. It didn't go through any club racing because it didn't meet any specs. But I let the guys drive it around. I think we used it for one of our King of the Hill, races at one point. And it drove differently, but not noticeably better or worse. And I think it was probably just because we didn't have a lot of, one-to-one comparisons going on. Like, it was a Group C, a Mercedes, I think it was. And so we didn't have another Mercedes that had everything the same except the chassis to race side by side. And it was just on one track, so we didn't do it on multiple tracks or anything like that. I certainly can't speak one way or another, but it was interesting. And watching the slow-mo videos, the guy, when he was promoting the idea, did a bunch of slow-mo videos of the car entering a turn and how it behaved.
How the front end slides.
It looked really cool.
And I think that's what he was trying to do, is trying to get the front ends to move away from the slot, so for a visual effect. Now, we tried that in 1/32 scale racing back in the 70s, I suppose, where the whole guide was mounted on a plate in the chassis with a pivot just in front of the motor. So the whole guide could move side to side like that. The idea being that when it went into a turn, the front end of the chassis would move to the outside of the turn and effectively become wider, right? So that your contact patch of the outside tire was further away from the slot, right? And to an extent it worked, but the problem there is, of course, when you have 3-inch centers and 2.5-inch wide cars, you immediately have to start making rules to limit how much that movement can be. And you also want to be sure that you have a rule that says that that guide must center itself, so that when you're running it on a straightaway, the car's not quarter of an inch over to left or right, right? And eventually the complexity of that just turned it into an absolute non-starter as far as competitive cars were concerned. I still do a little bit of that kind of thing where I'll mount the guide in the car on 2 pieces of piano wire right up the middle of the car and allow it to flex ever so slightly left to right, but it only flexes maybe 10 or 15 thousandths of an inch each way. And what that tends to do is it tends to soften that initial transition as the car gets into a corner, and as the guide hits the slot and starts to move in the direction of the corner, then the car doesn't snap quite as quickly. The tail doesn't snap out quite as fast. But again, whether that really made a lot of difference or not, you know, if you've got a well-built, very standard chassis, they still work the best.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was going to say, I don't know how much understeer would work in a slot car.
Yeah.
Well,
sorry to interrupt, but I'm going to sign off. I've enjoyed the evening. I hope to see you next time.
Yeah, please come back.
I will do.
Yep,
Good
thanks
night.
for coming, Petrucci.
See you, bud.
yeah, John,
Let me go get one of those cars.
yeah, if you take it right to the limit, John, understeer in a slot car is not a great idea. Only because you're constantly changing the slip angles of the front tires to the track, which is not hugely problematic, but it can introduce some sorts of frictions to some sort of friction on the tires.
Yeah, and it's not that much different than a real race car. I mean, there's some drivers that like understeer in a corner, but most don't.
Yeah, but don't forget, slot cars actually really don't understeer. They're gonna see how the guide pivot.
Oh, I see that. Yeah.
It's just a very little, right?
Right.
As I say, it's only 15 thousandths or whatever, and all that it does is, as the car gets to the turn, it just allows the front end just to relax a little or glide a little as it goes into the corner, instead of getting this sudden thump of the force on the front end of the car.
Does it have vertical movement as well?
No,
you don't want that.
there's no vertical movement.
The chaparral? Yeah.
Dennis, I'm sorry, my internet connection dropped out there a second. When you were saying about the golden triangle, the 2 front wheels and the pivot and the guide being a nice stable triangle, presumably that's just for wood tracks, yeah? Because we need to get quite a lot of float on the wheels on plastic track.
Agreed. Yeah.
Okay. That's just
I did say at the time that when the car relies on the front wheels as part of its handling paradigm, then it's a good idea to have them solid like that.
Yeah, sorry, I was getting terrible dropout. So,
yeah, I would agree with you there that is a problem. Generally on wood tracks, I would do it that way. On plastic tracks, maybe not. And in fact, in the times when we were still having a lot of proxy racing that had a mixture of plastic and wood, then I would generally build them a little differently. I'd build them as what we used to call an isofulcrum car, where the rear end, the motor, rear axle, and the center of the car and the guide was all one piece, and the front end and the side pans of the car that hold the body would float up and down a little, so that you could get some kind of adjustment for the variations in the height of the contacts on the track, from sunken for braid to raised for scalextric, for example.
That's interesting, because the TSRF sort of chassis is kind of opposite to that.
That's the Pip Slot, yeah.
So look at this bar has so much flex. That's downward.
It moves a long way, yeah.
And then all the way.
Too much.
So if it's in the slot, it could potentially be like that.
Wouldn't that cause your car, the body, to drift out and smack the other guy?
Yes.
It would, yeah.
Yeah, so you need to run on Carrera track or something to run 132s
like that,
on a 124th track.
And Martin, that's what I was saying too, that when in the early days when we used to build them with a piece of brass that hinged from side to side like that, we had to make all kinds of rules about how much movement you could have and how you would have to recenter it and so on.
Well, there's an easy solution to that. Just put Michael Schumacher on the car.
Yeah, that's true. It's the only thing that causes fist fights in our local clubs.
I think that's the body mount hole. So you got to move the guide to one side to be able to mount it.
Mount the body, yeah.
Your body.
Wow.
Wow.
Interesting stuff. Interesting stuff.
Martin, it sounds like at your club, a slot car race will break out a hockey game.
Yeah, we're quite boisterous in the way we encourage each other's weaknesses.
Who is it was asking about the chaparral?
No, I was asking if it was a chaparral.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, 1A. And this one was the one that I had in the SCCA proxy a couple of 2-3 years back. I think came in.
Where's the body from?
The body was from a guy up in Oregon who is long since deceased, a fellow by the name of Doug Haynes, and it was from his company called Resilient Resins.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
I'm sure a lot of you guys knew about him. He made quite a range of early 60s sports cars and so on. He copied them off of other cars. I'm not sure where this one came from. He had them in 132nd and 124th scale. He had chaparrals. He had Lister Jags. He had Aston Martin DBR1. He had Ferrari Testarossas, things like that. He died, unfortunately, and took the secret of his resin compounds and his process to his grave with him. And so the molds, I'm not sure, I think they still belong to the club at which he raced in Oregon. They were down in Eugene, as I recall. And but nobody has ever picked it up, unfortunately. They were very nice. They're very light and extremely strong.
What you got, Russ? You're muted.
I have got a dental appointment to go to, so I just want to say bye to everyone, and I'll see you next week. And I really appreciate this, Greg. I think you got a really good thing going here with everyone. So
Thanks
take
for
care.
joining us. And we are running down to our 2-hour mark. Does anybody have any last things they want to show off? Phil, you got something you want to show us?
There's some new names on there.
I'm good.
Oh, okay.
I saw some new names. Portals 999 and Jeremy B.
Oh, yeah, Jeremy's been on before, unless it's the other Jeremy. Yeah, there he is. That's the one that's been on before. Hey, Jeremy. Oh, Portals 999 is on. Cool. Yep, and our regulars. Yeah, I mean, this is, it's probably the highlight of my week. Otherwise, just kind of sitting around at home.
I have a question for Andy. Andy, your club's not racing tonight or today, or?
Oh yeah.
I don't have a car that's allowed. It's the NASCAR up to 1980 or 83, whatever the year was where they started making the sheet metal bodies. It's up to that year, and I don't have a car for that yet. I've got a Bobby Allison car that I want to build for that, but I haven't gotten around to doing that. So, in fact, I wanted to. I asked the guys at the club, maybe I could stream because the races start at 8 o'clock, which is the same time that this call starts. Maybe stream the first 5-10 minutes. Show you guys a little bit, but they said that they were afraid that they would get in trouble with local authorities because we don't wear masks inside the club. We're not breaking any rules. I mean, we have this document that we have to sign every time we're there and stuff, and it says in there that we're not required to wear masks, but they're afraid that if the rules change or whatever, and I'm like, I don't think it's going to be a problem.
Well, that's very Teutonic.
Yeah, and the other thing is we don't have any internet there, so I would have to, Greg, you and I would have to maybe I'd have to go there and literally test, see if my cell phone has enough data, if the quality's good enough, because I don't want to bother everybody else with it if it doesn't work. So it is something they said they would allow, but after everything calms down. So at this point, we're looking at what, 2025.
I mean, at that rate, it might be easier just to take a little video and then screen share the video from your whatever it's got the video on it.
That's a good point. Yeah, we might try that. But yeah, otherwise, yeah, the racing's pretty much the same as it's always been. In fact, that's why I was really interested in the whole front axle thing, because a race I was at a couple of weeks ago, everybody kept telling me my front axle was too stiff, and it was on a wood track, and it was glued, as they say. It had some sort of glue goop on it. We were racing urethane tires, and everybody kept telling me my problems were that my front axle was too stiff. So. Kind of, unless I misunderstood anything, it kind of contradicts everything you guys were saying about when you're racing on wood.
Yeah, the only thing that I could say to that, Andy, would be that they maybe are looking for a little bit of lift on the front end so that when you're in the turns, the car will actually lay some more, lean over a little and take a little bit of weight off of the inside rear wheel in order to overcome the glue that's on the track.
Yeah, I was racing a TR7, which is a little top heavy compared to some of the other cars that were racing that night, and yeah, but that probably is what they're saying. Because the other guy, I mean, he had this. I think it was a Plafett chassis or a Schürrle, and it was. I mean, if you shook the car hard enough, you could see it move up and down, and I was like, and mine was you could move it, but you had to physically push it up to move it and stuff. So that's why I was.
You see, you're running on urethanes or sponge, because that makes a huge
urethane.
Okay.
No sponge.
Yeah.
Yeah, on a goop track.
Urethane on a goop track. That's interesting.
Yeah.
They want it's one of these weird things. Is we had a Carrera track there to begin with, and then they replaced it with a wood track. And they wanted to. They all talk about using sponge, but for some reason, they just won't. They don't pull it. There were some guys there a couple weekends ago that do a series here in Germany, and they were racing sponges, and they were like 2.5 seconds faster than our fastest guy.
Yeah. And a completely different chassis setup.
I wasn't there. I didn't get a chance to look. All I saw was the results, and I'm like, I can't even think that fast.
Yeah, well, and when Dennis was saying, stiff front ends, that's generally for cars that have hard rear tires, and hard is rubber, silicone, and urethane. Most often, most cars, when you run sponge tires, you don't even, most of the quicker, they don't even have front wheels, let alone, they're off the track, only because as the car goes around a corner, the outside rear tire compresses significantly and changes the attitude of the front end to the track. So if you've got front tires touching, they can impede the load of the opposite rear tire and stuff. So, but I'm with Dennis. I'm not quite sure why you would run glue and urethane. The cars just tip over. Like there's just so much grip, it's ridiculous.
I think we're going to have to end on that mystery, and maybe Andy will find out more for next time. So until the next time, I'm going to hit stop, and everybody can wave bye-bye, and then we're going to watch Martin's video. Bye.
Wonderful chat, guys. Those